everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of May. It's actually still only the second last week of May right now, but I leave for Europe on Monday and I thought I would start talking about all of the books that I read so far, and I'm definitely going to have a few more books to talk about by the end of the month because I've got those long flights to get to Europe. But I was hoping that maybe I'll be able to find a quiet place at some point while I'm over there after the month finishes to finish talking about whatever I read on my flights. So this has been a surprisingly good reading month so far. I've already finished 7 books, and that is kind of more than I thought I was going to do this month just because it's been a busy month. I also did get sick for like a week and a half of the month. I only just started getting better this week, and so that was like pretty much a whole week of no reading. So I am surprised by how many books I read, and I've read some really good ones as well. I've read a mix of fantasy, sci-fi and romance, and I have found a couple of new favorites, which is fun. So the first book that I read back at the start of the month, it feels like that was so long ago as well. Like I am struggling to even remember reading this book, but the first book was Visions of You by Catherine Cowles. And this is the first novella in the Lost and Found series, which is an interconnected standalone romance series that I've been getting through. And this was actually supposed to be read at the start of the series, but I'm already on to book 3, and I just decided to take a break from the series and go back and read the novella. So it does take place before the events of the first book, but we follow a different couple, so it doesn't really matter. And it's in a different location in a different small town to where the rest of the series is set, so it really doesn't matter. But the main character in the first book, Holt, he moves back to his small town at the start of the first book, and in this one we follow him kind of before he moved back, and we get a bit of a look into his private investigation company that he owns, which is what his life was really focused on before he kind of moved back to the small town and had his romance. But the couple that we follow is Lex and West, and West works for Holt's private investigation company, and Lex is West's sister's best friend. So his sister and Lex both live back in the small town that he's from, and he gets a call from his sister one day basically explaining that Lex, her best friend, has this stalker situation happening. And so Holt and West decide to go to the small town to stay there for a little while and investigate what's going on. And from there we kind of get West and Lex's romance, and it was very cute. It was definitely very rushed. Like, it was a very short novella. I think it was like 150 pages, and I think the story could have been a full-length novel. Like, it did feel a bit rushed, and at times things felt a little bit like fan fiction-y, a bit Wattpad-y. I don't know why, because her writing has never felt like that to me before in any of her other full-length novels, but I think it's something to do with the fact that she put all of these tropes in. Like, Lex had this guy best friend who she's really close to, and at one point West got really jealous of that situation, and then there's like the close proximity stuff that's happening because they have to stay together in this cabin while they're kind of trying to avoid the stalker and all of this stuff. And I think if it was spread out across a full-length novel, it would have worked a little bit better, but it was fine. It was still really fun, and I had a good time with it. It just, it felt a little bit more immature than her writing does normally. Also, the whole like big conflict in the book, the whole stalker situation, I felt like just wrapped up way too quickly and easily, and it felt like it just didn't feel realistic how everything was just brought together so quickly and seamlessly in a happy ending. But it was fun. I didn't mind it. I rated that one 3 stars. And then the next book that I read was Throne of Glass I'm so excited that I finally finished Throne of Glass and I've started this series, and I'm starting to know what the hype is about, and I am just so excited to keep going with it. I filmed a pretty in-depth vlog of my reactions to reading this book, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but I rated it 5 stars and it was a great first book in the series. I don't think I was expecting to like it as much as I did, because I've heard a lot of people say that you do need to like push through the first few books before it gets really good. And this one did have more of that YA kind of a feeling, but I like that. I kind of have fun with that, and if it's done well, I can still enjoy a YA fantasy, and this was really good. I am glad that people say her writing improves as the series goes on, because there were some things in this that I was a bit like slightly roll my eyes at, but overall it was just fun. I didn't think too seriously about the quality of it. I just had a really good time, and I really enjoyed filming that vlog as well. So I'm hoping to possibly vlog the rest of the series. I've got the entire box set behind me, and I'm just so excited to get into the next one. The way that it ended made me so intrigued about what's going to happen next, and I want to learn more about these portals and things, and yeah, just get a bit more into the magic that's happening. So I am a little bit devastated that I started this right before I am leaving for Europe, because now I'm going to have at least a 5-week break before I can get into the next one, because I've decided I want to read them all physically. I want to tab them and ideally vlog them as well. So I'm not bringing any books on my trip. I'm only reading on my Kindle, so I'm gonna have to take a break, but it's fine. It'll mean that I'm even more excited by the time that I get to the second one. So that was Throne of Glass, and that was a 5-star read. Okay, and then after that I finished Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really enjoyed a lot of this. I have mixed feelings about this one. I thought I was going to love it a lot more than I did, just from some of the reactions that I've seen of people reading it and raving about it, especially on TikTok. I remember when it first came out, I think it was last year, people were like sobbing, and just everyone's reactions when they first finished it was a lot. And so I had pretty high expectations, and I don't think they were met. I get it. I get the feelings at the ending, because I think I did cry a little bit in this one, especially at the end. It was a lot, and I like how it ended. I don't want to say too much, but I think the ending was kind of what it needed to be without it devastating me too much. Yeah, without saying too much. But in this one, we start in the first chapter, we get to see a space mission that you can tell right away is going wrong. Like, it's going really badly, and people are already dying on this space mission, and they're not sure if it's going to be able to get back to Earth. And then we go back in time, I think it's like 5 years, to the start of all of these people that we've just seen in the space mission entering this program to start to train to become astronauts and space pilots. And the perspective that we're in is of Joan, and I really liked her. She was really intelligent, but also just like a good person, and I liked the different relationships that she builds with all of the people in the program. I loved her relationship with her niece, her sister. So her sister has a daughter, and she has basically spent her entire life helping her sister raise this child, because she had the daughter when she was way too young. She wasn't prepared, and Joan is essentially her niece's second mum. Like, she spends most weekends living with her, and her sister is just this selfish, horrible person, and she never redeems herself. Through the entire book, I was like waiting for her to become a good person, and she's just not. And I get that that is part of the story, it's part of the plot, and it's something that Joan has to deal with. But we went really in depth into their relationship, and we got a huge part of it was them and them fighting and things like that, and I just hated all of those scenes. She just frustrated me so much, and Joan was just such a good person, and she keep helping her and keep helping her niece. But yeah, and the way that she treated her daughter, there were some scenes that I think the parts that I cried at the most, and the parts that I felt the most emotion at, were the bonding scenes between Joan and her niece, when her niece would come to her upset, or you could see the trauma that she has and the things she's facing because of the way that her mum has been treating her. And Joan would just have these big conversations with her where she'd be like, you know that you're my entire world, right? Like, you have somebody who loves and appreciates you, and you are wanted and you are loved. And yeah, that was very emotional. I think that was kind of, yeah. But obviously that was kind of a side plot as well. The main thing that we focus on is Joan and this program, and it was so interesting. I loved that part. I loved the crew, getting to know them all and seeing their different personalities. There was this one girl, what's her name? Lydia. Lydia, that was so funny. Basically, no one likes her, and Joan kind of gives her a chance just because she's so nice and she wants to give everyone a chance. And yeah, she's just this like selfish, self-centered person who thinks she's smarter and better than everyone, but the blunt things she comes out and says are just really funny. And I loved Griff. He was a really cool character. There was this whole, because this is actually, I don't know if I mentioned, but this is set in the 80s, and they're essentially like the first female astronauts that are allowed to train and go into space. And so the program is filled with all these male pilots, and most of them are awful to the women. They make like condescending and sexist jokes all the time. And I really appreciated Griff. He was always standing up for them, and I just liked the conversations that were in this around that whole thing. Like, there's a conversation that Joan and Lydia have with each other, because Joan just gets frustrated that Lydia keeps laughing and egging on the guys whenever they say these sexist jokes and like say these horrible things to the women in the program. Lydia's point of view is that she needs to become one of them in order to fit in, to be allowed to be in the program and to be one of them. But Joan's point of view is, the more that you allow this to happen, the more there is this divide between the males and the females, because they think that it's okay, and she is allowing them to be making these rude comments and these disgusting jokes. So yeah, it was interesting to hear like all of the girls' point of views on how they think is the best way to deal with it. And it's horrible, but it's just something that is a reality for them, and they have to deal with it in their own ways. So yeah, that part was pretty shit, but also very interesting. And there was also a big romance in here that spans most of the book, and I did really like that romance. It was very sweet, but it was also, there were some chapters that just felt very long. I think from like the halfway point up until, like, I reckon a good chunk of it, like up until the very end, I was quite bored, because they were just living their lives happily but also training, and I was just a little bit bored for a lot of it, which is, I think those are the two main things that made me feel disinterested. Like, I did find myself zoning out of the audiobook at times, and yeah, it was mainly when she was happy. so like, but it's a little bit toxic, but like, there was no drama happening. She was just happy in a relationship, and it felt like that part was just a little bit too long. And then also the parts with her sister, which were just infuriating. And something that I really did enjoy about the set out of it was because you already knew from the start that some of these characters had already died right in the first chapter, and they were fighting for their lives, and we're not sure what the fate of a lot of the people that we meet along the way are, and you start to get to know them and really love some of these characters and bond with them. And so there's this sense of dread all throughout the book as you're getting closer and closer, and they're training over the years, and you know that they're coming up to this mission where everything's going to go wrong. It was a horrible feeling, but at the same time, it was very different. It was something that I haven't really experienced before in a book, so I did appreciate that. And yeah, I rated this 4 stars. It was a fun, different read because I haven't really been in the perspective of an astronaut before, so I liked that. And as I said, I enjoyed the conversations around feminism, and yeah, I would definitely recommend. And then after that, I listened to the audiobook for Next to You, which was book 2 in, I think the series is just called the Next series, but it's the book after Next of Kin by Hannah Bonin Young, and there's only 2 books in that series, and they're interconnected standalone romances. And I rated the first book in that series 3 stars, but I loved this one so much more. I rated it 4.5 stars, and I loved both of the characters. I also really loved seeing all the characters that we knew from the first book. So in this one, we follow Matt and Lane, and Lane was Chloe's best friend from the first book, and Matt was Warren's best friend from the first book. And we saw them meet at like a party in the epilogue of the last one, but we didn't really get much time of them together. But now at the start of this book, we have kind of jumped forward in time, and the entire group is really close now, which is so fun. So we've got Chloe, Emily, and Lane, who are the 3 girl best friends, and Emily is also in a relationship. I think she's engaged at the start of this one, and then all 3 guys are also part of the group. And so yeah, it's a really fun dynamic. I liked the parts that had all the friends together. But at the start of this one, we're following Lane, who is basically, she's feeling lonely, and she, in that group situation, like, it's really fun, but she is like the only single one. And then there's Matt whenever he's around as well, who's the other single one. And both of her best friends are in serious relationships, and she just kind of feels like she's falling behind a bit. She also has really bad anxiety, and she doesn't really like to leave the house. It's a big deal for her when she does. And some of those scenes where she kind of gets back from things that have happened and she gets into bed and she just has to spend a whole day in her bed trying to recovering from it, they were really sad. I think the anxiety rep in this was actually really good. I enjoyed it, and I liked the way that Matt handled how Lane treated him when she was in these kind of spirals. But basically the plot of this one is, on her birthday, they all go out together, they get really drunk, Lane comes home, and she ends up doing this like social media deep dive where she's looking into things that make people feel passionate, because she has her job in some kind of like creative job. I think she does graphic design or something, and she does enjoy that, but she's looking for something that's going to give her life meaning, I think. And so she gets into this deep dive. She is drunk, and she ends up watching all these videos of people restoring buses and creating doing the van lifestyle of renovations. And she ends up buying a bus that night, and she wakes up the next morning and is kind of like, what did I do? And we kind of go from there with her adventure of having to go and pick up this bus, which is a fun road trip scene because she has Matt come with her, and it's like a 15-hour drive or something that they go on together, and they stay in a motel. So there's this really fun close proximity that happens on that trip. And then she gets the bus, and she Warren and Matt all kind of renovate this bus together, because I don't know if I mentioned, but Warren and Matt run a mechanics shop, and she has agreed to help them out with like the branding for their store, because they've just bought the store off their old boss, and so they're like putting up they need like new branding and everything. So kind of in return for her doing that work, they let her park the bus at their store and they all renovate it together, and that part's really fun. I really enjoyed the whole bus plotline. It was very different and a bit funny at times, and the road trip that they go on was really fun. I loved Matt. He's part Samoan, and he grew up on an island off of Canada. So his parents and a lot of his siblings, he has this huge family with like heaps of siblings. A lot of them still live in the house on the island, and they end up there. They must be close to where they're picking up the bus or something, but they end up there on this road trip, and I loved his family, and they're also welcoming to Lane, and there's this other plot about her sister's wedding, which was really fun as well. And I just loved the slow burn of this one. They have like one fun night together, kind of where they're being a bit flirty, but then from then onwards they are basically just friends, and all through this adventure they go on together, they are really close friends. And I really liked the development of their friendship first before it turned into a relationship. It was very tension filled, and I just adored their friendship. And I loved that it took ages before anything happened. It's my kind of a romance when it's like really slow burn. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I just really enjoyed Matt as a character. He was very mature. He treated her amazingly. He was just doing thing after thing after thing for her in terms of like favors, and not expecting anything in return. Like all he wanted was to spend time with her, and it was so wholesome. And the main conflict in the book is when that does turn from friendship to something more. Lane struggles because she just doesn't think that she deserves to be in a long-term relationship or to be happy with somebody, and so that's something that she has to overcome. And I really liked how Matt handled the whole third act conflict. It was really, really like refreshing, and the communication was great. And yeah, I was just pretty surprised by this one, because I could tell that I liked Hannah Bonin Young's writing style from the first book, but in that one I just felt like the characters were immature. I felt like it was a little bit toxic. There were just so many things that I disliked as well. So I went into this one with lower expectations, and I was just really pleasantly surprised. So this was 4.5 stars, and I definitely want to continue going through her backlist. I'm excited to see what other romances she has already. And then the next book that I went into was the first book on my May TBR from my TBR jar prompts, and that was Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. And I was also pleasantly surprised by this one. I was actually obsessed with it. I started this right before I got sick, and so I basically finished it in like one weekend before I got really, really sick, where I like took a week off from reading. I had one weekend, it was the Mother's Day weekend, so I was staying at my parents' place, and I was just pushing through the fact that I was starting to feel sick. And I basically read most of this that weekend, because it is very quick to read, because it's filled with mixed media, and a lot of the pages are like, there's literally pages that are almost blank. But I loved this format. I wasn't sure how the plot would come across to me in this kind of a format, because I don't think I've read anything that's mixed media before, that I can remember anyway. And I also went into this without reading much of the plot. I don't even think I read the back before I started it. I was just like, let's just get into it and see what it's about. But it's a sci-fi, and right at the start there's a letter which basically tells you that this entire book is an accumulation of files that this company, the Illuminate Group, have put together to tell the story of an event that happened on a spaceship, basically. And then we get into the story after that, and we learn about the story through a whole lot of like interview notes, chat messages between people on the ship, emails between the captains and things like that. So basically what the plot is there's this planet that a whole lot of people are living on that's really far away from everything else. It's like a tiny planet. It's like this tiny planet really far away. And at the start of the book, this huge ship, which is run by a company called Biotech, invades the planet and basically starts like dropping bombs, and they basically just attack everyone. And the planet sends out like a help call, and this big ship called the Alexander comes to save the day basically, and they have this battle that we don't really see, and the Alexander gets away with 3 ships worth of civilians from the planet, as well as the military people who are already on the Alexander. So it's like this big ship, the Alexander, and 2 ships connected to it which are filled with all civilians. But during that battle, the jump capabilities, I don't know what you call it, but the technology that enables the ship to be able to jump light years has been destroyed. So they are basically stuck, like they're months and months away from the closest like place that you can get to be able to jump to another planet to get to safety. And this other ship, the biotech people, are following them and trying to destroy them. But that whole situation, that ship is getting closer and closer, is like the least stressful thing, because at the same time on one of the ships this virus has started breaking out and it's mutating, and yeah, that whole thing is terrifying because they're essentially on this ship where the air is circulating, they can't get any new air, so the virus is just trapped in this spaceship and going around and around in circles and mutating. And yeah, I don't want to say anything else. The plot basically goes from there, but there were some horrific scenes in this. Horrible things happen. The plot twists were insane. I feel like I was getting whipped around by the plot twists. There was this one part towards the end where I'm pretty sure I did cry. Like I was in tears because of something that happened, and you feel like there's no hope, like everything is a disaster, and then there'll be another plot twist where you have hope again, and then another plot twist where that hope is taken away from you. And it was just a wild ride, but I had so much fun and I loved the ending. The ending brought everything together in the best way and also made me intrigued to get to the second book. My friend who read this, I think she said she read it years ago. She really liked the first one and didn't enjoy the second one, and I don't think she even finished it. So I am a bit nervous to see how I feel. I hope it's as good. I hope, because it's a trilogy, so I've got the other 2 books ready to get to when I get back from my holiday as well. But I'm gonna keep my expectations a bit lower for those just because of that. I don't want to set them too high and be disappointed. But that was Illuminate, and I ended up rating this 4.75 stars. I don't know what it is that kept it from being a 5-star, but I just had such a great time. It was so good. So I would definitely recommend. It's such an old book, like I think it was 2013 or something, 2015. It was really hyped a few years ago, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it for a while, but I would definitely recommend. And then the next one, I don't even want to talk about too much. I listened to the audiobook of Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, and I was really, really disappointed by this one. I really loved, this is the second book in the duology. What do they call the duology? I'm not entirely sure what it's called, but the first book is Divine Rivals, and I think I rated that 5 stars. I really liked that, and the way that it ended, it gave me hope that the plot of this one was going to be interesting as well, but I just didn't care. I didn't care. And it just felt way too long. So much was happening in this plot. Like, it was intense, the things that were going on, and there were these intense war scenes happening, and I just didn't care. I also didn't care about the romance, which I loved in the first one. So yeah, it was just a bit disappointing. There was this part right at the end which was absolutely devastating. That was kind of the only part that I had any like proper reaction to, where I really was like, oh, why did that have to happen? And that was really sad. But apart from that, I feel like I just kind of got through the entire book being like meh, not caring, which was, yeah, disappointing. I feel like I can't say too much about this one because it is the second book in the duology and I don't want to spoil anything that happened in Divine Rivals, but I rated this 3 stars. I still recommend reading the first one or just reading the duology. It's not long, it's 2 like 300 and something page books, so it was like easy to get through the audios, and I really do love the narrators of the audiobooks as well. So I recommend, especially just because the first one was so good. I do own special editions of Rebecca Ross's other series. I don't know what that series is called either, but that's A River Enchanted is the first book, and I've heard good things about that one, and I am still very excited to get to that really soon as well. All right, and then so the only other book that I have finished so far is Daddy Issues by Kate Goldbeck, and I rated this one 4 stars, and it was so cute. I really enjoyed this. We follow Sam and Nick, and Sam she's like an art history major, and because of COVID she ended up having to move home. She had all of these exciting opportunities that she was going on in the art space, and then when COVID hit she ended up having to move back home to her home city and move in with her mum, and everything's just kind of stalled. It's now 2025. I think this was published at the end of last year. So it's been 5 years since the pandemic, and she's just done nothing else with her life. She basically spends her days scrolling TikTok and hanging out by the pool in her mum's apartment complex. And she's also in this like infuriating situationship with this guy called Hal, who she met at a comic book store. There's this really fun plotline to this where Hal loves comic books because of her relationship with her dad, and yeah, she that's how she got into art basically. But yeah, which is why the spines look like comic book strips. But yeah, I didn't mind Hal at the start, but he turns out to be not a great character at all. He treats her really poorly, and so yeah, she's dealing with that situation where she's wanting to get into something more serious with him, but she's too scared to tell him how she feels. And one day at the pool she starts like having this cute banter with this kid, this little girl who's playing in the pool, and then she meets the dad, and the dad is Nick, and they've just moved in to the apartment next door to her mum, and they share a wall. Her mum's office that she's currently sleeping in shares the wall with Nick's bedroom, and so she had been getting frustrated over the last few days while they were moving in because of the loud noise that he's been making. But basically they just start getting closer and closer as they live right next door to each other, and because Sam gets along really well with the little girl, and yeah, they just have this really cute friendship that starts to build. Again, I love it when it's when the relationship is built on a friendship, and I liked that for the first like possibly 50% or maybe just under 50%, Sam doesn't talk about anything to do with attraction when it comes to Nick. Once they start to become more, you can tell she's extremely attracted to him, but it's more about the friendship that they build. And also she has this like one-track mind on her obsession with this situationship she's in with Hal. But I did like that because of that, it's not just all based on attraction, like it is just the friendship that they're building, which was really great. I loved Nick. He was so mature, so sweet. The things that he says to her, I just loved. And the way that he is with his little girl, what's her name? Kira. The way that he is with his little girl, Kira, is so sweet. So obviously he's a single dad and he's separated from Kira's mum. So I did also really like that the whole pretty much second half of this is very much talking about the realities of becoming a stepmom and like getting into a relationship with a person who has a child, and how important it is that it's done the right way and how serious it is to consider it. Like, I feel like in a lot of these like single dad trope romances, you just get this fluffy romance and everything kind of just works out. It's a bit too simple. But in this, I appreciated the conversations that they had and the thought process that Sam goes through. She really has to decide if it's something she even wants, because she doesn't even know if she wants kids, and it's a huge life change for her and for Nick and for Kira as well. But despite that does sound very mature. I feel like apart from that whole situation, I actually didn't love Sam for most of the book. I don't know, I don't want to talk about this in a way of where like I'm being condescending or anything, but I don't understand, and I can't empathize with a character whose point of view I'm in, who just does absolutely nothing with her life and is miserable about it, but is not doing anything about it either. And she just felt a little bit immature at times. Yeah, I just kind of found her to be a lazy person in general. And there's this one argument that she gets in with her mum. Her mum has been letting her crash in her office for the last 5 years, and her mum's been trying to move on with her life. She was divorced from Sam's dad years ago, and she has a new partner, and in this book they get married as well, so they want to live their life together as well. And I just found it wild how Sam couldn't comprehend the fact that her mum might want a little bit of privacy of her own as well with her partner. And just because you're in her head when she has this argument, some of the things that she thinks, I'm like, you are the most selfish person ever. Like, I think one specific line in their argument, her mum says, don't you think me and Perry, her partner, would also appreciate some privacy for ourselves as well? And we're in Sam's head. She thinks like, oh, despite the fact that I have been complaining for the last 5 years about my lack of privacy, I never thought once that she might be thinking the same thing. And I was just like, oh. But anyway, I did appreciate her development. By the end of the book, she has kind of got her passion back for life and for art, and she feels like more of a personality that I could root for. But Nick really held up the characters in this book. He was the best, and I did like their interactions. I liked her as a person when she was interacting with him. I just didn't love being in her head sometimes. So I think that's why I couldn't give it any more than 4 stars, but a fun read. And I really, really, really like Kate Goldbeck's writing style. She has another book called You Again, which I think I've heard it compared to like a Harry Met Sally kind of a romance, so I am very intrigued to read that one because it was just very witty, the banter was good, and I was laughing and giggling at times, so I definitely recommend Daddy Issues. And that was the last book that I read this month, so Here's my little stack. So I've got 4 of them here, and then I listened to 2 of the audiobooks as well. But a very pretty stack actually. I'm pretty happy with the books that I read this month. I feel like I found some new favorites and I got into some series that I'm really, really excited to continue on with. But that's all for now. The next clip, I should hopefully have some pretty kind of a background somewhere in Europe, where I'll talk to you about whatever books I read next week, which will be the last week of May. This is my current view. It's insane. Love it here. Hey again, just checking in from Mallorca to finally finish up my May wrap up. It's like 3 weeks later now, and I'm already in the middle of June. And yeah, it's just been so busy the last few weeks, so I haven't had a chance to film the last couple of books that I read at the end of May. So I thought I would just quickly sit down. Now that I kind of have a quiet afternoon, we've kind of been back to back doing so much for the last few weeks, and tomorrow is our flight out of Mallorca, which is so sad. I'm so sad to be leaving, but we're kind of just going to chill here on the balcony, get some takeaway food from one of the places nearby, and watch the sunset from our balcony because our view is insane. But even thinking about trying to talk about these books feels difficult because I feel like I read them so long ago, and I finished them both kind of on my flights to Europe, like at the start of the last week of May, and then I really didn't read any more that week just because we were so busy. So we'll see how I go, but the first book that I finished up on the first flight that we had to Europe was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I rated that 3 stars. I really thought I was going to love that one from the start of the book. I remember I had such a big emotional reaction to it. The start of the book is basically, see if I can remember the characters' names. So we follow Elsie, who right at the start of the book, we're in her point of view, and she is living at home with her husband. She seems really happy, and she mentions that she wants a bowl of cereal, and her husband Ben goes out to buy that cereal for her because they're all out, and he never comes back. And so that was like the first chapter. We basically spend the next like little while going through her figuring out that he had passed away. He had an accident on his bike when he was going to the supermarket, and then her going to the hospital and starting to deal with this grief, and also meeting her mother-in-law for the first time, who didn't even know she existed. She didn't even know that Ben was married. And then we go back in time to the start of that year when Elsie's basically meeting Ben for the first time, and then we experience their first date and their like whirlwind romance that ends up in them getting married in only like being together for 6 months or so, and then obviously the terrible ending that happens. Yeah, I have never experienced the like amount of emotion that I did in this book right at the start. Like at the start of a book, I've never experienced that before in the first like couple of chapters. I remember I was driving home, I had like an hour drive, and I was just in the car like bawling my eyes out, and these are characters that I didn't even know yet. I didn't have any kind of connection to. And then I was packing for my trip, and I was crying. It was a very emotional book. It was a lot about her dealing with her grief. It was kind of her and her mother-in-law kind of dealing with their grief together. It was a very interesting one, but I definitely got a little bit bored midway through. Yeah, just despite the fact that I had such an emotional reaction to this, I actually didn't love it. Like, the plot felt a little bit boring. I felt like I overall didn't care too much about what was happening. Okay, I'm back. I just I just got distracted for a little bit with picking out what food we're gonna have for dinner, and I can't remember where I was up to about Forever Interrupted. The actual plot of the book felt a little bit just meh, a bit nothing. And I get that this was just, you know, a woman going through her grief, learning to appreciate life again and all that kind of thing, but it was just a little bit boring. I wish something more happened to her, or she had a bit more of a happy ending. I'm not sure how I felt about the ending either. It was okay. It felt a little bit hopeful and yeah, but I just felt so sad at the same time. And despite this, I did cry. Like, that very last sentence made me cry again. Like, I did have these big reactions to it, but at the same time I just kind of didn't care and I was bored. It's a weird thing. So overall I decided to rate it 3 stars. Oh, and there was this plotline with her best friend who at the start, I absolutely loved their friendship. They were so sweet together and they just had this, really loyal and trusting and just this amazing best friendship. And I get as well that Elsie was going through grief, but she was awful to her, and I didn't like how that friendship progressed in the second half of the book. I just loved their friendship so much. I felt like they were so supportive and cute at the start of the book, and then it just got ruined for the second half. But again, I get that this was realistic. It just wasn't entertaining to read. But that was Forever Interrupted, and then the only other book that I read on that first trip over was The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I was really excited to be finally doing a reread of this one. It's one that I have always thought that I would reread, and that I thought I would reread a few times because it was just so fun the first time. It's the only book out of the entire Off-Campus series that I actually liked. Not sure why. I rated it 5 stars the first time, and it was an easy 5 stars again the second time. It has so many flaws, and rereading it did make me remember the things that I disliked about the rest of the series. But something about, I think just the tropes and just Hannah and Garrett in general in the first one are just so fun. And I'm just excited now that I've finally read it, that I can watch the show and finally just figure out why everyone is talking about it. I'm gonna be so late to this because I was just stubborn. The show came out like a couple of weeks before I left for this trip, but I really wanted to read the first book and I just didn't have time. And then since reading it, I've just been busy here and I haven't had any chance to watch it. So when I get back, it's gonna be the first thing that I watch, because I'm excited to see their story on screen and everyone seems to love that. And I just feel like I'm falling behind. I'm also, since I've been here, every Summer After's adaptation has come out as well, and I'm really excited to watch that one, but I have to wait till I get back. And that's kind of been getting mixed reviews, so I'm unsure how I'm gonna feel about it, but I'm still excited to give it a try. I definitely didn't remember disliking Garrett as much as I did this time at the start. He definitely grows on you across the book, but I remember the first time I hated pretty much every single guy in all of the books except Garrett. But in this one, he definitely does the same thing that the others do, where he talks about women in gross ways, the puck bunnies thing. All of the guys in this series, because we get both point of views, and all of the guys' point of views, they have this just like gross and also unrealistic, I feel like, way of speaking. They just say these like annoying sexist things so casually in their minds all the time. But Garrett definitely gets better as the book goes on. And yeah, like the writing is definitely pretty immature. And I think it does feel way more like YA than a college romance should. But that's okay, I had such a fun time. It was, this one just has all of my favorite tropes. The fake dating thing is so good. The way that tension is built up is amazing. And it also has that depth as well, because Hannah has been through some stuff. Her and her family have been through a lot, and I just appreciate that storyline as well. It's something that unfortunately is realistic for young women, and I just think it adds a lot to the story. I am very interested to see how the show does all of the guys, because as I said, Garrett is my favourite, and then they all just kind of go downhill from there. I know so many people love Dean. I didn't get that. I hated his book and I hated him. But I'm assuming because so many people are loving the show that they have fixed that part of, I can't imagine that they would put some of the quotes that are said in the books into the show. I'm hoping they fix that. But yeah, a little bit rushed, but that's the deal, and I rated it 5 stars. I think I'm gonna wrap that up there because those are the only books that I read at the end of May. I have read a couple more this month, but I guess I'll do a wrap up when I get home from Europe at the end of June. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, then please give it a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye.